Hello there. Hello, hello. Welcome to A Broad Experience podcast. This is your host, Anthony, and I'm excited today at what we are going to be covering. And I don't know about you, but I face some challenges in life. And every other person that I know of faces some challenges. Talk of maybe having a someone leave you, like where a relationship breaks. How do you deal with that? And many other challenges. Now, today on the podcast, we have a guest who is known as Fabian, and he's going to tell us about his experience and how he reinvented himself through travel. Remember, we are talking about abroad, the experiences, the ideas, and things like that. And before we even go there, let's appreciate all the people who are listening or watching. I already see we have someone who's jumped in. Bad Palace rather, is watching. Thank you for watching. If you have any question or any comment that you'd like to make as we are going on, you're welcome. And also those people who get to listen or watch after we are through with this show, I appreciate you. Thank you very much for being with us. And now, I don't want to take one more minute because I know we've got quite much to cover with our special guest today. So please help me to welcome to the show, Fabian. Hello,
Hey,
Fabian.
hey, Anthony. Hey, thanks for having me on the show. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we are excited to have you here.
Yeah.
Where in the world are you?
Right now, I'm in Toronto, Canada, which is about 2.5 hours from New York State, close to Niagara Falls. So if everyone's heard of Niagara Falls, Toronto is about two hours from Niagara Falls in the EST time zone.
Is that where you were born?
No, I was born. Oh, my story is interesting. So I was born in the Jamaica West Indies, so the Caribbean islands. Then I migrated to New York City. So grew up in New York, grew up in Queens, and then through did my schooling in New York, and then later on in my late uh, early 20s moved to Toronto. So moved up into Toronto, Canada. A lot of family everywhere, a lot of family in the U.S. So a lot of travel back and forth. So home has been a lot of places to call it that. Yeah, home has been a
Wow.
lot of places. Yeah.
You must have quite some experiences moving around. I mean, the person that travels and gets to see the whole world for whatever reason, I
Yeah.
believe is someone that has so much to share with us. I'm curious, what was the first time that you moved away from home?
When I moved away from home, I believe I was maybe around eight. So 8 or 9 years old was my first travel abroad, if you want to call it that. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think it was my first visit to the US. Went to California, first trip. Used to spend some summers there. I remember briefly, vaguely, but that was my first trip. Was going to United States, and then I went back to the West Indies to back to school. But in my summer, I would take trips to New York or California and go back, visit my aunts, visit my uncles. Um, those were my early travel expenditures was when I was that young. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. And our earliest viewer has a question that we just let him to ask right away.
Sure.
I mean, you've been to the US, we are
Canada's,
also in
well,
Canada.
Canada. So that's an interesting question, right? And the broader question is there a better, well, what's the best place to go? I don't think there's actually an answer to that.
Hmm.
I think depending on what you're looking for and what you need, right? Every country serves a purpose for that. There is no
Mhm.
one great country, right? Like there isn't any. So when you're thinking about job opportunity, when you're thinking about um, high income earnings, the U.S. would reign or rank top more than Canada, right?
Mhm.
If you're talking about quality of life, raising your kids, if you're talking about um, more of building and formulating, Canada would be a candidate to consider. So it all depends on where you are in your life journey, right? There isn't one place, because I think everything you outgrow every place sooner or later,
Mhm.
right? Sooner
Mhm.
or later you outgrow it. So um, when people ask, what do I like better? It's apples and oranges. Canada's more relaxed. It's a lot slower, right? And I don't want to paint a broad stroke, because Canada's a huge country and there's different cities. United States is a huge country. There's different cities, but I grew up in New York City, so it's very fast, very go go go, let's go go go. And then I moved to Toronto, which was a little bit slower in pace, more relaxed, more quality time you can spend in things, right? So, but they don't. Canada does not have the aggressiveness of sometimes you need in life, right, to get things done.
Mhm.
So there's the balance, and there's no right or wrong. It's just really it's like asking, what do you like better, breakfast, dinner, or lunch? Well, it depends, right? It
Yes,
depends.
yes,
So yeah,
sure.
yeah. Hopefully
Yeah.
that, yeah. Yeah.
You talk about it having a more relaxed way of life, and our viewer, Bad Palace, is asking for another relaxed
Mhm.
way. I mean,
Yeah.
on immigration rules, which is more relaxed? Is it the US or Canada? Which is easier?
Yeah, I would say that's a great question. I would say Canada's more relaxed in that, because Canada's a huge country, and the government has been trying to, or I would say more lenient in bringing in more people to the country, because it wants to grow the population, right?
Hmm.
So in order for you to grow the population, you need to allow more people to come into the country, right? US, it's, I don't know, 350 million. Like, they're already at capacity, if I were to say
Hmm.
that, right?
Hmm.
But Canada is nowhere near that. So you would have, just based on the bare numbers and where things are, you would have a better chance in going through the Canadian process and building something, because they're more lenient and more open to bring folks in, because they're still growing the population. And you can Google that. That's a fact
Yeah.
that you can see. Yeah.
Good to know that.
Yeah.
Now, in your movements, as I am looking at your profile, the
Mm.
move that had the biggest impact, or rather the biggest time that you made a decision to move, is after a breakup. Maybe you can tell us, even before the breakup, how was your life? And then this time,
Yeah. Yeah.
breakup,
Yeah.
how did it all happen?
Yeah. So the I think the message in here, right? So the message around travel and staying, I would say move. I think movement is movement is the key for action,
Hmm.
right? If in order for you to do anything, y- by by definition, you have to move. If you want to achieve or change, you have to move. And when I came to Toronto, I built a life, kids, marriage, career, and that went well for many, many years. And after about 30 years or so, my marriage ended. And it ended, I would say, abruptly. And I cover this in my book, and this is where traveling came in for me, because while I was going through that transition, if I want to call it that,
Hmm.
the thought that came in my mind, and when you have a lot of thoughts in your mind and things you need to process, it's hard to process those things thoroughly when you're in the same environment that causes the stress, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the actions that I took was I decided to take a trip while I was going through my the ending of my marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So I took a trip, I traveled, I went somewhere. And what I realized throughout that experience was how much of a benefit traveling did for me while I was going through that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when people say, well, what is that? What do you mean by that? Like, what did it do? And what it did for me was traveling during those times of uncertainty. It brings you clarity, interestingly enough, because it removes you from your environment that you're currently in. It resets your thinking in what and where and how you should progress through whatever challenge you're going through. And I don't necessarily mean this like you need to you need to catch a flight and go 50,000 miles away, right? It could be simple as you going to another city, going to another town, right? Going away for the weekend, going to visit your friend, coming, really removing yourself from the scenario that you're in from an environment perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started to travel, and I was traveling throughout my sort of transition of my marriage ending, as hard as it was doing that, because people would say, well, why would you leave, or why would you, it feels like you're running away from the problem, or you're escaping the problem. And actually that's not what happens. When you remove yourself from a scenario, you realize how much external things were being consumed by your brain, related to the scenario. And when you remove yourself from the scenario, I ended up being able to think a lot more clearer. I ended up to see it from a different perspective. And traveling has helped me greatly. I remember a friend of mine said, "Hey, whether it's the therapist chair or the passenger or the airplane chair, they all end up giving you um, the same help,
Mm-hmm.
right?" Um, and I think the takeaway here is, as you go through any of your life changing decisions and life changing events, travel during that time, take a break, right? Because it unplugs you, it resets you, it gives you a different perspective to look at things. And when you come back from that trip or that weekend getaway or visiting some family in a different city or town, you actually see things differently. You
Mm-hmm.
actually are processing things differently. So it was greatly helpful for me. And that's what I captured in the book, was just how, while what I was going through, what made me decide to travel, who I met while I was traveling, because that's an interesting part too, right?
Where did you
Whether
go to?
I went to, in the book, I my first trip during this, when my marriage was ending, I went to Mexico.
Okay.
Yes, I went to Mexico, and Mexico is, southern tip of the United States, connected to Texas, in between before you get to Central America, which is Panama. So Mexico's right there. Mexico's a huge, huge city,
Yeah,
another
yeah, yeah.
210 million people.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to Mexico, but I went to the west side, Baja California, which is, it's a region called Cabo, and Cabo is part of Mexico, but it's on the western side of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to Cabo, and spent some time there, and that was my first trip away while I was going through my divorce, and that trip really, and I went by myself, solo trip. rented a little Airbnb place and just spend time alone. And I think what happens when you spend time alone, again, not alone in the sense that you're just, you're curled up in a ball, right, and just laying in
Mm-hmm.
bed,
Mm-hmm.
but be alone with yourself, right? Be alone with yourself. And so I would spend time alone with myself. I would still go out, obviously, but I wasn't looking for company, put it that
Mm-hmm.
way. And
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people when they travel, they look for company, or they look, well, I can't travel solo because I feel uncomfortable, or if I go somewhere, I need to find people to be around. I'm a social butterfly, right? I like being around people, but I also like
Mm-hmm.
my solitude. And I think when I traveled, I enjoyed remaining um, solo, having the freedom to do what I want to do when I want to do it, and making the decisions for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So, so if I pause there, and if you really listen to what I said in that, when you're going through a breakup or you're going through an ending of a relationship, you being able to make decisions for yourself, decide when you want to get up for yourself, decide when you want to go to sleep for yourself, removing yourself from that environment and getting yourself re-exposed to that freedom and that flexibility, it changes your perspective, right? So that's one example where when you travel and you're doing this um, on your own, the dynamics of the travel experience forces you to decide for yourself. It
Mm-hmm.
forces you to make the decision. It forces you to think just for yourself, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
not thinking about, and I don't want to say this in a selfish way, but you're thinking just for yourself, because when you're going through certain things, you need to be thinking for yourself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it
Mm.
definitely it definitely helps you in that perspective.
How far back was this?
This was during COVID. So this was 2001.
Okay.
Yeah, so 2001, and I remember I remember I remember if you remember when COVID started, right? Travel was
Yeah.
really challenging, right?
Yeah.
Like you
Sure.
couldn't travel, you could go anywhere. And
Yes. Yes.
I remember um they finally opened back up the traveling, but you had to get the COVID shot, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they said, in order for you to travel, you have to provide the COVID shot to wherever destination you were going. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember not being able to travel for months, right? Because COVID was really locking in a lot of people. And
Mm-hmm.
the minute they opened back up the travel, but and they said, "Hey, you can travel, but you have to get the COVID shot." I was like, "I'm going to get the shot,"
So
because
that you can get to travel.
get the shot, because it
Yeah.
was right, because it was that was so important to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
the minute they opened it during COVID, I took that trip during the COVID time, and it was very it was challenging in its own. You had to get the shot and show it, and get one when you were there to come back. But I mean, I did it because this had the benefit for me in removing myself and getting a clear head and being able to see a different perspective and focus on myself,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what I wanted, right? Because I think a lot of us miss that point in when relationships meet their demise, or relationships meet their challenge. It's
Mm-hmm.
We fail to go back and look at what do I want, right? Not what does she want or he want. What do you want,
Mm-hmm.
right? And in order for you to get to that question and start answering that question, you can't have distractions. You can't have someone else next to you all day, every day. You can't be on the phone with them. You need to remove yourself from it and
Mm.
really ask yourself, if what do you want as part of what as part of your next steps, or how you want to address whatever scenario you're in.
Yeah,
So
and I well understand you because I have had people. I've actually seen people do very horrible things when something like that happens.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I think your idea of moving away, watching from a distance, can really set you free, give you the
Hmm.
freedom to just
A
enjoy
hundred percent.
yourself.
Yes, 100%. A hundred
Um,
percent. Hmm.
yeah, a question comes in from our viewer, our dedicated viewer. Thank you very much, Bad Palace, for being here. Now, I don't know whether you could be comfortable talking about this, but he's interested to
Hmm.
know what happened with your kids.
Okay, so no, that's a great question. So my kids. I had older kids, right? So my kids were older. My youngest was at the time 15 years old,
Mm-hmm.
right? So my kids were old. My kids were older. I mean, age is relative, right? Because my old maybe not be someone else's old, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
my kids were older. I didn't have babies, 3 year olds, 4 year olds, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so for me, and even though I mean I had a 15-year-old, right? She was still in school. She still had things to do. She still was living, right? And I think this is the great challenge that I asked myself when I was deciding to take a trip,
Mm-hmm.
right? Was yes, I had children. Yes, they were. I'm sure they were. Hey, where's dad going? Hey, why are you taking a trip? Right? I'm sure they all asked that.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, I still decided to take the trip, and I figured out a way. I had you know grandparents watch. I had I had you have other family members that are actively engaged and involved and support you, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so when I would take my travel trips, I would make sure that someone was going to be able to manage and help manage them during that time. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I'm not saying that it was none of them were under 5 or 10 years old, so they were much older. But
Mm-hmm.
even if you have younger children, right? Again, it's not about taking a trip away for a month, right? Go away for 3 days,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your kids can survive for 3 days, right? Like this is the mentality that you have to come out of. It is changing the identity of being constantly available and taking some time for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
because the taking the time for yourself helps you reprioritize what's important and reprioritize the plan. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I remember a friend of mine I had a call with, and I told him what happened. And my good friend Philip out of Queens, New York, and he said, I hear you, Fabian. Like, sorry to hear what happened, but he said, so what are you gonna do now,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's the pivoting moment. Okay, it's not what happened; it's what are you. I think we lost connection there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're back. We're back.
Okay. Yeah. So the focus really should always be what are you gonna do now,
Mm-hmm.
and not what happened.
Yeah.
As much as you want to, and yes, I got pulled into the what happened and why it happened, right? And like everyone would, but there came a point where you have to stop asking the why,
Okay.
right? And you have to start focusing on the now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to figure out the what,
Mm-hmm.
right? What are you going to do now? It's already happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so my focus was more on, okay, so what are you going to do now? And in order for you to get to that answer, I couldn't do it in the same environment. So when I removed myself from the environment by taking a trip and traveling and doing those things, it helped me reset, rethink, and recalibrate exactly where and what I wanted to do with my situation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah.
Earlier on, you mentioned about it being a matter of the people that you meet. So it's not just about the places you go, but the people that
Mm.
you meet.
Uh,
And with
uh,
that, I thought
okay.
that maybe you've met some interesting people along the way, and you can share with us some stories.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was really the pinnacle points of the travel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the destinations were good and there were things to explore, but when you really take in the people you meet, whether it be someone at a restaurant or someone at a coffee shop or someone, while you're walking, you meet people, and it's fascinating because they don't know your history,
Mm-hmm.
right? So think about this, right? You're in a new place. They don't know history. They don't know your history. When you're in the environment that you remain, they all know your history. They all know what happened. They all know the story. They all know the relationship. They all know whatever the story. They all know. But when you go to a new place, they don't know you. They don't know your history. They don't know. And so right then and there, it's a clean slate. And when an interesting conversation that always comes up is when you go somewhere new, they're like, oh, like, where are you from? What are you doing here? Right? How come you're by yourself? Right? Like, I'm giving you some examples of things, but all of those conversations lead into them being inquisitive on who you are as a person.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that curiosity that they're about you and them asking about you becomes sort of self reinventing because you start like, hey, I actually don't like this, or I actually do like this. So I've met a lot of interesting people. I met this one guy and when I was in Cabo, right? This guy named Rico, and I talk about I haven't. I think it's like one of my third chapters in the book, and I met him and we were at a bar, right? I met him at a bar at the place I was staying.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up chatting, and of course he was like, "Hey, like where are you from, man? And what are you doing here?" And ended up talking to him. He ended up telling me he was retired from the army,
Mm-hmm.
right? Interesting thing, he looked very young, right? So I was like, "Are you really retired from the army? Because you look like you're like 20 years old." But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So he retired from the army. He said that he was in the hustle and bustle of life, and he decided to sell all his things, buy a boat, and move to Mexico and do fishing charters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and he loved it, and he enjoyed it, and he was like, "This is the best decision he's ever made." And to hear and to see people that have made those tough choices and are living their life on their terms, it's refreshing, right? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure there were challenges that he had in doing all of those things, and I'm sure he had his own hurdles. But when you discuss things with other people that you've met through your travel, and you hear their stories, and you hear what they have survived, what tough decisions they had to make, it's inspirational, right?
Mm-hmm.
It sometimes makes your challenge very small, right? That you're dealing with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
now you may be hearing stories of other people that are like, oh, like I lost my parents, I did this, I had to go do that, I had to this, and yeah, man, I'm here loving life, you know. And then so what it does is it gives you the opportunity to hear stories from other people, because everyone that travels has a story, right? By
Mm-hmm.
default, everyone who travels has a story, because when you travel, you're actually writing that story.
Yeah,
And the most interesting people I have met through my life are people that have traveled, right?
the
the
most
most
interesting
the
people.
most interesting people I have met are people, the most closed-minded people I have met are folks that have not traveled. And again, I
Wow.
don't mean travel as if you have to take a flight halfway around the world.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
talking traveling is movement. So someone that
Movement.
has moved around city, town, county, province, or countries or continents, right?
Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm,
it's those people, the most closed-minded people have never left the place that they grew up and stayed and lived, right? They're very
mm-hmm,
closed-minded. But
mm-hmm,
it's the people that are open and free and are willing to, because remember, when you travel, there's a certain amount of things that come with travel, right? You
mm-hmm,
have to be a risk taker to travel, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You have to be confident in yourself to travel, right?
Yeah.
You have to be self-sufficient to some extent to travel, right?
Mm-hmm,
You have to be you have to be taking a risk. You have to, so there's 5 or 6 qualities underneath this when you decide to take a trip that you're automatically doing. You just, it's not so um it's not so in front.
mm-hmm,
But if you think about the traveling process, and you, especially when you're going on your own, right? Think about what it takes to do that, right?
mm-hmm,
You don't know where you're going all the time. You don't know the language. You have to have your wits and street smarts aware. You have to have emotional awareness. You have to financially know the currency exchange. You have to figure out the bus system. Like all of those things there puts you out there, right? So by default, someone who travels and moves around, they they have a level of experience and risk tolerance and confidence and self-awareness that automatically comes with traveling. Automatic by
mm-hmm.
autom- by default, it comes with it. Yeah.
Wow. Cool. Yeah, so Bart Alice, referring to a comment that you had made earlier, says that the best thing is to have a fresh slate after hardship in life.
Mhm.
Yeah, so he agrees with that statement that you
Ah,
mentioned.
yes, 100%, hundred
Yeah.
percent. Yeah, and I think I think there's a piece in here when you talk about fresh slates.
Mm-hmm.
There is a when anything in life. So as you build life and as you build your history of life, you build identities, right? We have many identities.
Yeah.
What does that mean? An identity is you're a boyfriend, you're a husband, you're a father, you're a friend, you're a brother, you're right in the sense of males, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing for females, but we all build identities as we go through this journey of life,
Mm.
and identities are wrapped around the lifestyles and the people that we've built. So for an example, this is one of the things that I had to struggle with, and I want to tie into the clean slate, please, piece.
Mm-hmm.
When I was married, I was a husband. When I my marriage ended, I had to let go of that identity of being a husband. You have to let go of that,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have to let go of the identities that you built around, that was built around that life, whether that is boyfriend or husband or spouse or whatever. The problem that a lot of people face in not getting quote unquote the clean slate is they still hold on to those identities,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they still carry those identities. And I'll give you a simple example. When when I was married, every Sunday I would go and make a dish for the family, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Every Sunday I would go to the store, I'd pick a dish, buy, come home, cook, make the meal for the family. Okay. Did that for many, many years. When my marriage ended, I continue to still do that. I still continue to do it. And it was later on that I realized that this activity is linked to my identity as a husband. That identity no longer exists because my relationship has ended. You have to learn to let go of the identity. So what did I do? I ended up, instead of Sunday dinner cooking, I would go out on Sunday to the gym, or I would go out on Sunday to a friend's house for
Mm.
dinner, right?
Mm.
We have to learn. Well, then, so then the question you may ask is, well, why? Like, you should keep doing it if you enjoy it. Yes, I enjoyed it when I was a husband, but you know what would happen maybe 2 days later after I go through the whole scenario on Sunday and continue to do it. Later on that night, you're going to feel depressed, right? The next day you'll feel depressed. Why? Because the activity that bred that, the things that you identified with that activity was the husband role. That role doesn't exist anymore. So
Mm.
we have to learn to let go of these identities and get the clean slate, to the point of one of your viewers' comments, right? The you want to get to the clean slate. You want to be able to start. I don't want to say start new as if you're starting from scratch, because we're never starting from scratch. We are just continuing the story. It is just a new chapter in your story.
Mm.
Yeah.
I, in my imagination, because you mentioned at some point you have got to be self-sufficient. In my imagination, with you making those moves that you made, I imagine that you must have had some financial source, something that was maintaining you, that was taking you to those other places, and then we could be in being listened by someone that could be down. You've lost a relationship, or maybe some other things have happened. Maybe it's not even a relationship, but then you
Hmm.
find yourself at a place where you can't even support yourself. How do you
Hmm.
go about now traveling at that point?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, right? Um, I don't think it's necessarily when I talk about travel, traveling is in any capacity that you can maintain financially, right? And if that traveling is purely taking a train or a bus or getting a ride to go visit someone that is supportive of you, right? Doing that activity, it doesn't necessarily have to be you breaking the bank and spending all kinds of funds you don't have to go and take some wild crazy trip anywhere, right? I think the goal and the message is you have to remove yourself from the environment.
Just move.
Yes, you have to remove yourself from the environment. And when I say environment, I'm talking about, we all live somewhere and we all experience trauma and challenges in that environment,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when I say environment, that could be the house you live in, that can be the building you live in, that can be the area you live in, right? Environment is a broad concept,
Mm-hmm.
but the message is remove yourself from that environment. So here's an example of what I mean. So let's say you go, um, let's talk about the gym, right?
Mm.
People go to the gym to work out. People go to the gym to work out.
Mm-hmm.
Let's give that a simple example. People
Yeah.
go to the gym to work out. Why is that successful versus working out from home? People also try to work out from home. It never works out,
Yeah.
right? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because when you go to the gym, you're in a different environment. The people that are there are focused on working out. They're not focused on typing on their phone. They're not focused on washing the dishes. They're not focused on watching TV. They're only focused on working out, right? So in that example, simply removing yourself from where you were to going to the place where you are supported for what you want to do, it reinforces the journey, and it reinforces the energy that's required for you to move things through the processing.
Mm-hmm.
If you are in an environment, there's a saying, right? You cannot heal in the environment that broke you.
Mm.
Period. You cannot heal in the environment that broke you,
Yeah.
right? So uh, that's the takeaway in this. And so removing yourself from that environment in any capacity, whether that's just if you live in a two-bedroom house and you're upstairs and you can move to the basement, then you move to the basement. Where if you live in a place and you are in an area and you can move out of where you currently are and go across the street or go across. And when I say move, I'm saying move yourself.
Move
Come out
yourself.
of that. Yeah, move yourself. Come out of that environment, even if it's for 1 hour, for 2 hours, for a day. But what I find is that majority of people ha, do not understand the how impactful environment change is for your mental health. So
Mm.
you have to move. And my movement just happens to be, yes, I went to another place or I flew to another country, right? Um, some people's moves and my other moves were sometimes going to visit a friend and staying by his place for the weekend, right?
Mm.
It wasn't always grand, but
Yeah.
the point is I made the effort and made it a priority to continue to move and to keep my environment that I was in um, separate from where the environment where I went through the experience that was negative.
You've been mentioning your book as we are talking. Which is your book?
My book is How Traveling Saved My Life. It's available at www.sybr-book.
Mm-hmm.
And in my book talks about, gives some history on things that I've went through, such as my relationship and what led me to go through some of my travel decisions and who I met is some
Mm-hmm.
examples. I talk about some people I met through that. I think Rico's in there as well, right? And I talk about what I learned, right? What did you learn and what did you take away from meeting these people? And how did it change your perception in what
Mm-hmm.
you were going through? And did it, right? So the book covers that sort of journey. It's a series of books. This is the first one, and my next book will that I'm working on right now will cover what I was going through during that phase of the relationship ending, and where I traveled to and who I met. Because life is a journey, and as you go through the different pieces of it, I traveled at different portions of throughout my relationship ending, and I was in different mental states. So I this one just purely covers what happened at the end of that ended my relationship, why I traveled, where I went, and who I met, and what I learned from that. Yeah, so
Okay.
that's what it covers in the book.
Okay, so yes, once again to those watching or listening, the site is www.sybr-book.com.
Okay.
Yeah, you can go there and get the book and also, yeah, get to connect with Fabian. Now, Fabian, we're almost coming to the end of the show. Our
Mhm.
time is fast spent. And I would ask you, what would you want to leave us with? What is that thing that we should never forget? Something that you know, that you love, that we should never forget.
Never forget to prioritize yourself. Yeah, I would say that most a lot of us in relationships make ourselves second, third, fourth priority. And I think um, priority is not selfishness, right? Let's be very clear in separating the two,
Mm-hmm.
right? Priority is not selfishness. A lot of people confuse the two and they think if they prioritize themselves, they feel guilty. And
Mm.
then they believe that it's being selfish, right? Selfish is when someone is purposely only looking out for their benefit and are only focused on what they're going to get, um, that will benefit them. Prioritization is about you putting yourselves first. And when I say first, it is I need to the example with my with when the your caller asks about kids, right? I love my children. I would do anything for my children. But my priority was I need I need space to rethink and calibrate.
Hmm.
So I would say the message here to take away is learn to prioritize yourself. Prioritizing yourself does not mean you're being selfish, right? Um, and make sure that you focused on what's next, not what happened, but what's next.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you very much for that. That's wonderful. And
Hmm.
we are glad that you came and shared with us whatever it is that we have shared. And I believe that someone has got some value from that. Thank you very much for coming.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Anthony. Thanks for having me on the show. Love to be back anytime, and all the questions from your listeners were well thought out. So I appreciate the interaction.
Yeah, and I also thank all the viewers who are watching, those who listened, and even those who get to listen to it or watch after we are through. I highly appreciate you also. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks. So this has been a Broad Experience podcast. I have been your host, Anthony Muroro, and together with a wonderful guest, Fabian Cousley. Until next time, bye for now.